Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I am the festival director of Out on Film, Atlanta's LGBTQ Film Festival. I'm also an arts reporter for Georgia Voice, the LGBTQ newspaper in Atlanta. Over the course of his 45-year career in show business, David Pevsner has done it all. He's acted on Broadway, off-Broadway, in independent films, and on numerous TV network shows. While pursuing that very public career, he began exploring his deepest sexual fantasies, from becoming a mature male escort in his 30s to appearing in his blog of erotic photographs celebrating nudity and sexuality and attracting a large international fan base. Dave has written a very, very fascinating book called Damn Shame, a memoir of desire, defiance, and show tunes that I read recently. It is so entertaining. David, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I've followed, as a film festival director, I followed your work for a long time. And then, and I read the book, is like, wow, there's just so much more that I didn't know about. This is such a fascinating book. But I mean, if you could just, can you talk a little bit about your career and getting started? And obviously, I want to talk to you about musical theater because I'm a musical theater nut, but just talk to me a little about your career.
Well, I mean, it all started. I mean, it pretty much started as soon as I could like open my mouth to sing.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Commercial jingles on TV that I used to like scream in the back of the car, make my family crazy. And then, just making up my own plays in grammar school and then high school, doing high school theater, going to college to study, moving to New York City to be in the theater, starting to write, and then wanting to take, see what LA had to offer me in terms of television and film. And then I've literally stuck my toe everywhere. There's like not a facet of the biz that I have not at least stuck my toe. And it's a little skitsy sometimes, but when I'm juggling like something that I wrote with something that I've, done for, TV or my OnlyFans page, or like, I mean, I try to stay creative in every aspect of my life. And there's never been one avenue for me, pretty much never. Even when I was doing theater, was always singing in theater, or, if I was doing, straight acting, I was also writing at the same time. So it's been a lot of juggling and a lot of, it ain't been boring. I got to tell you that.
So you obviously have a huge, musical theater has been a huge part of your life. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first stuff I ever did was, I wanted to be in musicals, when my folks took us to see like Fiddler on the Roof on the national tour. And I knew that, listening to Barbara Streisand sing Funny Girl, that was it was really important to me, and taking out the albums from the public library of Seesaw and Once Upon a Mattress and learning all these show tunes, and then studying singing and studying, to do musicals as well as straight drama. And really, when I first moved to New York City, it was all about musicals. That's really what I wanted to do more than anything. And I did a whole bunch in and out of town. But I guess I, as much as I loved doing them, I also kind of felt like at the heart of it all, I'm a storyteller and I'm an actor.
Yeah.
So I kind of stepped back a little bit to kind of, study a little bit more and kind of work on my chops, and then try to like move towards a more dramatic stuff and then balance both of them. So I've pretty much freely jumped from, musical stuff to drama, to stage stuff, to TV stuff. It's funny, there's really been no straight line for me in terms of, staying with one thing and going only in that direction.
Exactly.
But,
Grew up. I'm sorry.
well, no, I was going to say that doing a show like When Pigs Fly, which I did in 1996 in New York, was so smart and funny and gay and just right up my alley. Being in the midst of that show made me go, I think like this, only a little dirtier. So that's when I started writing songs. So that led me into a whole nother direction, a whole nother musical milieu, So it's crazy, Somebody keep it straight for me, because I can't.
You grew up as a shy kid. Can you talk a little bit about you know, finding your comfort level as a gay man and how long that took you?
Well, I mean, I always knew as a kid that how I was different,
Mhm.
which everybody, who's gay knows that something's going on inside. And I was just really afraid to to investigate it, to acknowledge it, until I got to college. So I had high school girlfriends, and I had, um, the gayest that I really was, the underwear ads in the back of GQ and After Dark magazine, trying to realizing that that's what I was attracted to. But I didn't do anything about it until I got to Carnegie Mellon University, which was my second freshman year. I had 1 year at the University of Michigan, and it was a
Mhm.
miserable year in many ways. And I knew that if I was going to, because at Michigan I was not majoring in what I wanted to major in, which was
Yeah.
theater and music. Finally, decided to enough of that, go to Carnegie Mellon, and that's really where coming out of the closet happened. That's where I explored my sexuality. Started to. Um, I still felt a great deal of shame about having sex because, when you're a virgin until you're 19 or 20 years old, that's a lot of years to feel kind of shitty about yourself because you feel like that all you've heard about being gay is that it's going to kill you and that you're damned to hell, and people made fun of me and called me a faggot and beat me up on the playground just for the perception of being gay. I wasn't even having sex at the time, but it was the perception of it. And so 20 years of that, and then starting to actually live your life and trying to, um, you know, see what it was like to navigate that world as a gay man. And it takes, I was out of the closet from my second year of college on. I was never in the closet in the industry, in showbiz. Um, that was not something I knew that I was ever going to do because it just felt too much of a part of me
Mhm.
to step inside a closet and pretend that I was somebody else. I
Okay.
had the girlfriends and felt not, friendship, but not a lot of passion.
Mhm.
And so I needed to kind of pursue what it's like when I go after what not only my loins tell me, but what my heart tells me.
Gotcha. After a while, you did become comfortable as a gay man, and you began exploring your fantasies, and you became an escort. Can you talk a little bit about that decision?
Well, in the self-esteem, I always called myself the skinny, ugly Jewish kid growing up. And so, and I always aspired to, have a body like the guys that I was so attracted to in GQ and in After Dark, and then later in porn. And I finally did when I was on tour with South Pacific with Robert Goulet.
Ooh.
Um, ooh, Robert Goulet, my God, Robert Goulet. I started, you have a shitload of time
Yeah.
while you're on tour. So I started working out and I built myself up. And that kind of really built my self-esteem in a certain respect. Then eventually I like to say that all my self-esteem was in my biceps. Um, but I hadn't quite caught up in the head. In my head, I was still kind of the skinny, ugly Jewish kid. So I was constantly looking for validation
Yeah.
and constantly, like, just wondering. There was just a lot of conflict between the old David and the new David, and neither one of them was very happy or settled.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I did, and I'll call it acting out, but it was something I really wanted to do, was I was so curious about porn and escorting sex work to think like, can this skinny, ugly Jewish kid become somebody that somebody would pay money to have sex with? It was something I was curious about. It was doing porn. It was something I was curious about. And again, it was all kind of a need for validation. But finally, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do it. I saw an ad in HX magazine, which was a free rag in New York City. And it was a company called Maturity Escorts.
Mhm.
And at the time, I was 36 years old, which, to start escorting seemed like a little old. And I went, and it was the right place at the right time. And I had this interview, which is actually a pretty funny section of the book, I think. It's like, you couldn't write this shit sometimes, the stuff that happens in one's life. And I became a male escort, but I was doing it while I was performing off-Broadway in high-profile off-Broadway shows.
Mhm.
So it was this insane double life, being pulled in two directions. And, I would do my show, and then sometimes, right after that, my pager would go off and I'd go and have a date for pay. And for the most part, they were separate, except for the couple of times when, as I talk about in the book,
Yes.
where, I was in a guy's hotel room and we had finished up and I was like putting my shoes on. He goes, "Excuse me, can I?" And he goes and he pulls out the program from the show that I was in that he had seen just that evening. And I used a different name for my escorting.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, like that had never happened. That little crossover thing had never happened.
Yeah.
He was really great about it. But I said to him, please don't, you just don't need to talk about it. He goes, he said, who would I tell? I'm from Dubuque. So I was kind of like, okay, well, but yeah, so I kept them separate, but it was great. I loved it. I loved both my jobs. I loved them.
Great. How long did you escort?
On and off, I think in New York, on and off for about 2 years. And then in LA, couple of years later, I started again and on and off for about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after that, you began doing, eventually you began doing a blog of erotic photos online, some on Tumblr, and then eventually you started your OnlyFans page. Well, I mean, was there any hesitation to do OnlyFans?
Yeah, well, so it kind of goes back to Tumblr. I ever since 88, where I first posed for the photographer Tom Bianchi.
Mm-hmm.
I posed for him. I posed for a couple other people in New York, but then I moved to LA in 98 and I started to shoot with a whole bunch of photographers. So I had this kind of backlog of photos that really had nowhere to go because the internet wasn't somewhere where you could put them. And every so often they would go into an exhibit or a coffee table book or something. But then I discovered Tumblr. And in 2013, I was kind of torn between, should I put these out? But I started, we were once when President Obama took office, I was noticing that there was like a backlog of conservatives who were like showing their faces and trying to make America suck. They were trying to put us back in the dark ages. And I was like, I hate this. I don't know what to do. I mean, it was just I just found it to be so frustrating, and the fact that like the evangelicals and the fundamentalists were starting to have this voice, that I thought was very unhealthy. So finally, I was like, you know what? I'm tired of keeping my cards close to my vest. This expression of my sexuality is so important to me. Not only do I enjoy posing, I also tried to bring some art to it, like I do with everything that I do. I tried to bring some creativity to it. And as I was getting older, I realized that there's the issue of ageism, and that not a lot of guys that had kind of the background that I had, which is in legit theater and TV and stuff like that, have, had their hard cocks on the internet. So after seeing a couple people kind of take some of my photos and put them on Tumblr, I decided I'm going to do it myself. Yeah. And I started this blog, which was essentially a curated gallery of all the different photographers I've worked with. And, I tried to be really careful about curating them so that they had a point of view and a sense of humor. And sometimes they were just, this, but it ran the gamut. And that's what I did until COVID. Well, actually, until 2018, when Tumblr decided that nudity was not acceptable. And they said they wanted a more, what did they say? A more
tasteful or something like that?
It wasn't tasteful. It was positive, a more positive Tumblr. And I was like, well, then that means, sexuality is negative. And I was not having that. Exactly. So I kind of was like, I'm going somewhere else. And OnlyFans had really started at that point. So this was in about the end of 2018. I started taking all the photos from, the hundreds of photos that I had on Tumblr, posting them on OnlyFans and not charging anything because it was free on Tumblr. I felt like it should be free on OnlyFans. Then COVID hit. And I had started to shoot some videos for a filmmaker friend of mine who did erotic and sex videos. And I was really enjoying it. And I was like, this is really an expression of my sexuality. This is really like finally feeling totally authentic in expressing my sexuality. But I did not want to just put them out there for haters and looky-loos to be like, oh, now he's a porn star type thing. I have nothing against that, believe me. But if I was going to do it, I kind of wanted to do it my way.
Yeah.
And I said, if I'm going to post videos, I'm going to charge a subscription, because then people who really want to see it will be there, and not people who are going to point at me and tell me what a slutty whore I am and this, that, the other thing. I just wasn't interested in that. I handle it all like it's an art project, and is it porn? Is it XXX? Where's the line? You tell me. It's different for everybody. I totally accept that some people think it's just porn. Mm-hmm. Some people think it's whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I just keep my head, keep going and be creative and find new ways to express my sexuality, solo, duet, whatever. And it's been great. Not only financially has been nice, but also it just speaks to me to do this,
Exactly.
So that's where I'm at. I still do it, and I still try to, keep creative. It's almost 4 years later that I've been doing videos, or 3.5 years. And it's hard to stay creative with all that, but I find my way. It's part of the challenge, and it's fun. It's fun.
When you began doing this, you literally began reaching people all over the world. Can you talk about the reactions, all the positive reactions you got from all? Because so much about this is body positivity, sex. Right. Can you talk about the positive reactions you got from people literally all over the world?
Well, I get messages all the time from guys, 50 and up, saying, thank you so much. Thank you for being the kind of freedom that you express and the kind of shamelessness that you express has made me feel better about myself. Yeah. Because I also get a lot of messages from guys, or I've heard a lot of stuff where people say, well, I'm 50 and I don't have a boyfriend, and I put on a couple pounds and I'm done. Nobody wants me, and I don't know, the gay community can be so fickle and awful, and which can be true. But for my money, if you're 50 years old and you decide you're done, you might have another 20, 30, 40 years ahead of you. Okay. You can't be done. It's up here. Because what I've learned about posting my stuff online is that there is something for everybody. Like, there are 20-something-year-old guys who love my blog. There are 90-year-old guys who love my blog. There are guys my age who love it, and guys my age who don't want anything to do with it because they like younger guys. But the point being is that there is somebody out there for everyone. And if all you're doing is putting it out there, is kind of putting your shell at the forefront, that's a problem. That's why I like to be creative with I'd like to give other elements besides just the physical in what I'm doing. Sometimes it is just physical and sometimes it is XXX, but there's also other elements. I talk a lot directly to the guys and gals who follow my page. I try to have a connection with them, just like I try to have a connection with the camera. It's really all about connecting. Connection, self-esteem, and confidence. If I could that's what I believe my book puts forth. Yeah. And those are the answers for everybody who feels shitty about themselves, for everybody who feels they're done. I get messages from people thanking me because it's making them think a little differently about where they are in their lives and how, if you're unhappy, you got to do something to change that. And if all it is just going, you know what, today I'm going to decide to be happy about the fact that I'm alive. Yeah. When people talk about COVID and they're like, well, I feel really badly because I really didn't do anything. And you wrote a book, David, and you have your OnlyFans. I didn't really do anything. I watched a lot of TV. I'd be like, you know what? You know what you didn't do? You didn't die. You survived.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's everything, so give yourself credit. Give yourselves credit for what you have, and don't think all the time about what you don't,
Exactly. Exactly. There's a section in the book where you um, run into a 27-year-old kid in a bar in Los Angeles, and he says, "Oh, I can't imagine ever being 40 years old," which is it's just
I
floors me.
was I was 50 at the time when he said that to
But
my
can
face.
you talk a little bit? I mean, the gay community is look, the gay community is horribly guilty about that at writing people off at a certain age. Can you talk about that and how what you're doing sort of dispels that notion and reinforces positivity and at any age?
Well, one of the things, I think about, like I said, there's a lot of younger guys who love older guys,
Yeah.
and then there's a lot of younger guys who are like, don't come near me, don't look at me, you're disgusting, ew, I never want to be like you, you're saggy, you're this, that, the other thing. And I remember when I was younger, and when I was younger, I did not aspire to be with older guys,
Yeah.
but I never had that kind of vitriol about it. And I don't quite know what it is. I think, I think the internet, I think social media has a lot to do with, the ills that we have, even though I use it and I love it, but I don't get where the anger comes from.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people can't just say, hey, not for me, but have at it, or, if you see an older guy naked on the internet, and some people are just like, ew, gross. Like, I've heard good and bad about me, ugh, he's failed, he's a failed actor, just, putting his hard cock out there to make a couple of bucks. That's not why I'm doing it, but I'm not going to convince them.
Mm-hmm.
But they look at it as just like older, saggy guy putting it out there, and he should be ashamed of himself. What would his mother think? What would that all that shit? And I just won't have it anymore, because there's no reason to debase our sexuality at any time of our lives.
Exactly.
You go overseas and on the beach, you see kind of zaftig women in little tiny bikinis and, kind of heavy set guys in little Speedos, and they don't give a crap what anybody thinks of them. They feel good, they feel free, and they don't give a shit what anybody says about them. Here, you wear a Speedo and you have a little bit of a belly, holy shit. Don't, watch out. Watch out what people say. And I'm here to say, you know what? If you want to wear a Speedo, wear a Speedo. If you want to wear a muumuu, wear a muumuu. Whatever, just the kind of we're so screwed up about sexuality in this country.
Yeah.
It's polarizing. It's a polarizing subject matter. People are very shy to talk about it. People are very hesitant to talk about it, but it's in the very fiber of our being. And so when you learn to kind of express yourself sexually, when you feel good about your sexuality, when you go, okay, my body, I'm a skinny guy, or I'm a heavyset guy, or whatever I am, I'm still going to enjoy my life. I'm going to own everything I have here, ownership, and if you want to lose a few pounds, lose a few pounds. If you want to put on, great, do it. But don't say, I will love myself then. You got to kind of look at yourself and go, we're going to start from here.
Exactly.
We're going to start from right now.
Yeah. David, how would you say that have there been any repercussions for your acting, for the work you do online?
Well, I tell a kind of funny story in the book about the couple of agents who dropped me because one was a casting director, found a photo of me naked. And when she told me that, I was like, a photo of me? Because there's hundreds now. And so they dropped me. And then another agent that I went to say, hey, I just want you to know that I have this internet presence. Oh, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Dumped by email. But that was a few years ago. And more I'm finding that I don't think it matters as much to people.
Okay.
And I have an agent and I have a manager and they don't care. And I do, like, I'm doing a movie right now that I actually started last week. I'm starting now, and I play a modern Orthodox Jew. There's no nudity in it. Like, I can do more than that. So I hope that people, I don't want them to overlook what I have,
Mhm.
because that's not what it's about. This is one facet of who I am and what I do. And then there's the other facet.
Yeah.
So I've never been interested in saying, like, kind of going like, shh, don't talk about it. I don't walk into the room and say, hey guys, I just put a new video up on Onlyfans and in it, I get fucked. I mean, I don't do that. But it's part of my kind of oeuvre of who I am. Just like Scrooge and Marley, the Christmas movie that I made a few years ago, that's being redistributed for Christmas this year.
Thanks.
That's also a part of my oeuvre. You know, my songs, my dirty little songs, my kind of sweet and nice songs. It's all me. It's all me being as authentic as I possibly can be. I enjoy it all, and I know it's not for everybody. And I get that. I totally get that. But that's me. That's my life.
So how did the book come up?
Interesting. So, I've done 2 one-man musicals.
Yeah.
Where I take my experiences and some of it's musicalized and presented to an audience. One was called To Bitter and Back, and I did that back in 2001. And then the second one was called Musical Comedy Horror. And that was about my double life as an escort. Actually, it was about my sexual awakening into the time I became an escort and worked off-Broadway. That double life, how it led to a kind of really shit show of a relationship, and then the effect that all had on me to this day, actually. And I was looking for a place to do that show in Chicago. And I have a friend who does, she's a general manager for Broadway and touring.
Yeah.
She lives in Chicago, and I was home visiting because that's where I'm from. And I hadn't seen her in a long time. And I asked her if she knew somewhere that might do my show, some little theater somewhere. And she said, well, I'll read it, and she read it and she got back to me. She said, oh, David, it's just so risque. She goes, I just don't know anybody who does this kind of thing. She said, but it was really well written. Do you maybe want to write a book? And I was like, no, because I wrote a theater piece. Well, anyway, I ended up doing it in Chicago. And sometimes that was just kind of sitting in the back of my mind. And I thought, she threw down the gauntlet.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. And I did. And for 8 months, I would get up every morning and go to the coffee place and just, hunker down and bring it's funny when you decide to do something and you think you have a crappy memory, how things came back to me. A single word would make me go, oh, that story.
Mm-hmm.
And I never wanted it to be, here's my life and I did this and I did that, because really, who am I? Some people know who I am, a lot of people don't. But my experiences, I felt, spoke to the universal.
Yeah.
Everything that I've gone through, sexually growing up, the body shame that I felt, the ageism that I feel now, although I try to really not fall into that, slippery slope. All of it, and I realized that. And when I finally started working with my editor, Scott Sellers at Random House Canada, everything that I wrote came back to those issues: body shame, sexuality, and ageism. Mm-hmm. So that it wasn't just, I did this and then I did that. And everything kind of has a bent to it that tells that's my emotional journey through all of that. Some of it is funny as hell. Some of it is horrible. What I've either put myself through or have others have put me through. But I think it's all very relatable. And that's the reason to put out a book like this.
Great. So where can the last musical review, where can people watch that?
So Musical Comedy Horror is on Amazon Prime, except, and boy, was this not fun when they told us this the day before it dropped. They didn't allow the word whore to be used on a streaming platform because families. So it took a couple months for us to come up with something that they'd be happy with. So you can buy it on Amazon as Musical Comedy Horror, but you have to rent it as Musical Comedy Stud. Yeah. But you can buy Damn Shame on Amazon or anywhere you get your books. Independent bookstores are great. Yeah. And that's my stuff.
Great. All right. The book is Damn Shame, a Memoir of Desire, Defiance, and Show Tunes. It's a fascinating read, available through Random House Canada. David, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You take care. Thanks so
Bye.
much.